The Instagram live beef between Lamar Jackson and Marlon Humphrey has taken the Baltimore world and the NFL world by storm. And both Lamar and Marlon gave their sides to the story. We talk about what they had to say, preview the Ravens and Bills Week 4 matchup, and so much more coming up next year on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, and we're here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here, as always, and making Locked On Ravens both a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. We're free and available for you, all podcasting platforms. So video form on YouTube, you can subscribe, like the video, follow along there, and also in audio form, you can subscribe and follow along wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Another Purple Friday for the Ravens, 1-2, hoping to even their record to 500 on Sunday Night Football against the Buffalo Bills. And we're going to talk about that and the Instagram live beef continuing to take turns between Lamar Jackson and Marlon Humphrey. It's Sam and Joku of the Ravens Talk podcast. And Sam, what a whirlwind of a week for this Ravens team, starting off with the whirlwind of the game they played on Sunday in Dallas, which for 3 quarters, they were sitting pretty. But as we have unfortunately talked about before, you and I, that fourth quarter still giving them trouble.
Yeah, it's looking like more of the same. It's something that I'm assuming will get fixed. I mean, as you mentioned, for 3 quarters, the Ravens are looking phenomenal. And it's just that fourth quarter where the Ravens seem to be unable to get it together. So I think it's more of a coaching thing and maybe a little bit of a rust at the beginning of the season. But you have to assume that this gets corrected before too long.
Yeah, I think you have to, right? I mean, again, I think we've been saying that for a while because this is not just a one-off or a two-off. You know, last couple of years, we've seen more than our fair share of Ravens blown fourth quarter leads. But you're hoping that at least at some point they can right that ship and be consistent in that fourth quarter. And the messaging from Lamar Jackson, from John Harbaugh, from Todd Monken all seem to echo that something in that category might change, especially when it comes to how they approach the fourth quarter on offense. But before we get into all of that, I think one of the biggest storylines in all of football this week, honestly, Sam, has been Lamar Jackson and Marlon Humphrey's Instagram Live. I don't know if you want to call it beef. I don't know if you want to call it an incident, whatever it is. Lamar and Marlon definitely had some differences on the Instagram Live. Lamar didn't want the camera on him, said that Marlon shouldn't even be live in that situation, and called him out on his interception that wasn't against CeeDee Lamb in Dallas. And we can look at it from like a bird's eye view of what initially happened in that moment. But then we got context from both Lamar and Marlon throughout the course of this week. Lamar talked to the Baltimore media about it, and Marlon over on his Punchline Pod. So let's start with Lamar's kind of viewpoint on this, Sam, where he said, quote, you know, Marlo's going to be Marlo. I just didn't want the camera on me at the time because, and he knows this, I'm all about winning. I like to, I don't want to say win in style, but when we're up, I just want to punish people. I want to get out of there with a W, clear-minded. It's like, I didn't want the camera on me. That's my brother. He's going to do what he's going to do. But it's like, man, not right now. I'm a little ticked off with how the game went. So yeah, it's just, look, and I don't think Lamar even has been like a part of these Instagram lives for Marlon. That might have been the first time or one of the very few times Lamar's even been on one of them. But we know that Lamar strives for greatness, Sam. This is nothing new. We know that he holds himself to a very high standard. And as that comes, he holds his team to a high standard as well. I don't think Lamar was like meaning to call out Marlon and like, oh, I'm going to make you look bad. And, you know, he didn't do this with any ill intent. But look, we can be honest about it. Definitely not the time and place for Lamar to be on camera like that. Lamar let him know about it.
Yeah, and Marlon just need to read the room. I mean, he saw how Lamar Jackson felt at the game, even during the game, with his call out to the referees. You could tell that Lamar wasn't very happy with the outcome. So Marlon just needs to read the room. I mean, we all have friends like that, especially growing up. You know, when you're in your 20s, you kind of perform like that. At least some guys do. So it's just, I don't think it's much of a big deal about anything. But, you know, Lamar Jackson just felt the way he felt, and having that camera in his face is probably the last straw for him. But I don't think it's anything to do about anything. I think that those guys are perfectly fine, and it's just business as usual.
Yeah, am I worried about this long term for the team? No, I don't think there is any bad blood between Marlon and Lamar. I don't think this is a thing that is going to impact them. I know some people certainly view it that way, but I'm of the mindset of again, I just think he caught Lamar at probably the worst time he could catch Lamar in that instance, especially because he just wants to win, and he wants to win in dominating style. And the way that the Ravens played that game didn't go along with his mindset and his views. When you first saw it, though, Sam, were you kind of like, oh, whoa, like this is all? I wasn't expecting that. Were you kind of like, whoa, or were you like, oh, okay, that makes sense?
I was in the line. It makes sense. I mean, I know Marlon's personality, and it doesn't mesh well with anyone who's stewed. Marlon just keep going and going. I have friends like that myself, so not surprised by the way Lamar reacted. And I think if it was a more dominant win, I think you see a much happier Lamar. So just catching him in a bad time, and I'm sure they'll move on from that.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And Marlon, again, on the Punchline podcast, which is over there with Jack Settleman. They do a good job over there. I know that as well has gotten heat. I mean, Marlon's been in the controversy news headlines this year, man. I mean, it's been one thing after another. But hey, you know what? I'll give him credit. He's played really well to start the season. So on the field, he has definitely bounced back from his injury in 2023. But he talked about it too, and kind of took again like the joking approach of like, oh, I guess I have beef with the quarterback now, and kind of took that angle again. The way that he was talking about it, he was like, oh, Lamar's my guy, and then Jack was like, well, are you Lamar's guy? And Marlon's like, I don't know. So again, Marlon took the joking approach, something you kind of expect with him at this point. But I think the demeanor that he was talking about it, I don't think that anything's going to come of this long term.
Yeah, I think this is just, much ado about it. It might be a little awkward in the locker room, depending on how Marlon took it, but I'm sure Lamar, being the leader that he is, approached him and said, hey, no hard feelings, or just not feeling it that day, and maybe he'll get him on a podcast eventually to shore things up. I'm sure that's how it works in the PR team. I'm sure the Ravens PR team is working to get that done, so I don't think it's anything to do about anything, and if the Ravens, of course, get the win next week, we'll forget all about this.
Yeah, and actually, Marlon actually spoke about that on the pod and said that Lamar has openly told him word for word that he is not coming on the podcast until they win the Super Bowl. That is when he's coming on the pod. And we know that Lamar has a couple of things tied to a Super Bowl win, including that change of the jersey. And apparently now an appearance on the Punchline pod is tied to a Super Bowl win. So we'll kind of see if and hopefully when that comes to fruition for those guys. But again, it just kind of speaks to Lamar and his competitive spirit, Sam. And that's something I love about him. I know some people take it certain ways, and he's just like, oh, why is he being so demonstrative on the field? Why is he doing this? I mean, we saw I'm not going to be someone who calls it demonstrative. I don't think that's what it is. I mean, Lamar's a guy that he's definitely taken on more of a vocal leadership role over these last couple of years, particularly this year. We have heard him talk about it. We have seen it. And I think to me, it's kind of like, hey, I'm locked in. The whole team needs to be with me. The whole team needs to be locked in with me, right? Where, you're in that, Marlon being in a joking mood as he is. That's just kind of Marlon's personality, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But again, this is winning time. It's football time, and Marlon victory Instagram lives are not new. But at the same time, it's like, you're right. If the Ravens had been up by 28 and won by 28, it'd be a different story. But the fact that it happened the way it did, you have to be able to lock in to try to get over that. And that's, I think, what Lamar is trying to tell him.
Yeah, I think exactly your point. If it was a 28-point lead, this would be much ado about nothing. And Marlon's going to be Marlon, and we all know that. And Lamar, I'm very happy with the way Lamar is vocalizing his frustration this year. I think the AFC Championship game really stirred him up. You saw him in the sidelines after the game or during the game, during the waning moments of that game, and you could definitely tell if a switch was flipped. He doesn't want to be the guy. He knows he has to be the guy sometimes, but he wants to make sure that he's holding everybody accountable. It's not going to be just one guy winning the Super Bowl. It's going to take 53 guys, and Lamar knows that, and he's going to let you know about it on the field and off the field, as you saw last week.
Yeah, and actually, Marlon did not know that his Instagram Live caused this much controversy because Jack told him, he was like, Bleacher Report, ESPN, like it went everywhere. Yeah. And Marlon was like, I did not know that. It was kind of very surprised and shocked by it. But I think the thing that got it, actually, I didn't catch this the first time, Sam, because I was so focused on Lamar calling out Marlon on the interception that wasn't, where he was like, hey, man, they post on that social media team that Lamar's getting picked off by Marlon 4 times in practice. When you get in the games, you're dropping them. But the thing that got everybody's attention was Lamar telling Marlon, hey, you shouldn't even be on live right now. Like that, right. That's exactly what it is. And I think a lot of people love the call out, I guess, from Lamar to Marlon. It's not like hey, we now have beef and there's an issue between us. It's, hey, we need to lock in together. We're a team. And that's the leadership Lamar is currently showing. And I personally love that.
I love it too. There's nothing wrong with it at all, and hopefully he keeps it up.
I love it. So we'll be talking more about Lamar and his, I guess, grievances with some of how the offense went in that final part of the game against Dallas and how the Ravens should approach that moving forward, because we have heard from both Todd Monken and John Harbaugh, and both those guys agree that maybe they were a little too conservative at the end of that Dallas game. So coming up in the second part of the show, we'll be talking about what Todd Monken had to say and what we believe will be the best course of action for this offense moving forward. So be sure to stay tuned. Plenty to talk about here on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by Robinhood. With Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.5% APY on uninvested cash, receive unlimited 1% deposit bonuses, and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on an IRA account. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at Robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply for product-specific disclosures. Visit Robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC. And the show is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. PrizePicks is the easiest, most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. So one Caleb Williams passing yard gets you 1 win on PrizePicks every week in September. That's right, only 1 yard gets you an automatic win every football weekend in September. 4 weeks of free W's. Don't miss this deal on PrizePicks because it's gone once September ends. Plus, PrizePicks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. So for this Ravens and Bills game, if you want to go more on Derrick Henry rushing yards, more on James Cook rushing yards, you can do that over on PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONNFL on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. We're back, our second segment, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher and Sam Njoku still talking with you here on this Purple Friday ahead of the Ravens and Bills Sunday night showdown. We get into that preview in the final part of the show. But Sam, part of that is going to be how this offense handles themselves, particularly if they're able to get up big on Buffalo, which personally I don't necessarily expect to happen. But regardless, how they approach this moving forward. And Todd Monken had his media availability with the Ravens media yesterday on Thursday. And he was asked kind of about how that fourth quarter in Dallas went, asked about Lamar's comments on the offense and kind of what Lamar wants to see about putting the foot on the gas. And I'll pull up Lamar's comments on it quickly here just so we have reference. Again, this was at the interview with Fox after the game, so on the field. Lamar said, "I don't like how things are going towards the end. I felt like we should have put more points on the board. We should have put the gas on the pedal, and we're up 28-6. And Sam, I got to tell you, I agree with Lamar there. There were a couple of conservative play calls. Now, there was a lot of bad luck, I guess, that went the Ravens' way, or just a lot of weird things. Justin Tucker misses the field goal, and, Zay has that ball slip through his hands. The offense got the ball back after 2 Dallas touchdowns, not 1, and they go 3 and out. But Todd Monken was asked about it, and again, he ended up saying, quote, "I don't disagree with Lamar. We want to keep the pedal down because you don't want to leave even the door open. There are certain calls that I wish we could have been a little bit more aggressive." Actually, I think I used this picture of Todd Monken last week for us, but you know what? Reduce, reuse, recycle. Well, that's our motto here over on Locked On Ravens. But Sam, do you agree with Lamar? I mean, do you think that we're seeing just this overly conservative effort consistently from this offense that needs to change?
Yeah, I think the Ravens need to take. I remember the Patriots after I think it might have been Deflategate when Bill Belichick said we're going to kill every team we play for 60 minutes from here on out, and that's what they did. They didn't stop doing anything. You're going to stop them. All right, they're not going to stop themselves, and I think that's what the Ravens need to take with that approach. I think the Ravens, once they get a big lead, they want to do whatever they can to slow the clock. I mean, take the clock out of the picture. Run the football. Drag on the clock to make sure the clock reads 0 and they have the victory. But when you do that, you put a lot of pressure on your defense, and right now the Ravens have not been doing a good job of holding fourth quarter leads. So that puts the onus on the offense to keep putting the pedal to the metal. Press on that gas, do what you've been doing to be successful. And the Ravens need to take that approach, especially with these next games coming up with high octane offenses that the Ravens have to deal with. So I agree with Lamar. You keep on pounding, keep on pushing, keep on doing what you're doing on offense with success, by the way, and everything will be fine. So I think Todd Monken has no choice but to agree with it because it's a great assessment of the Ravens' offense right now, and I think moving forward they'll benefit from that.
And you could definitely tell Lamar was frustrated about some of those play calls late in the game. You could tell that he didn't necessarily agree with how the Ravens offense was approaching that end of game. And it almost cost him the game. Again, Baltimore's defense did him no favors. I'll tell you that much in the fourth quarter. Again, we also saw conservativeness from Zach Orr in that defense, switching over to too high stuff and saying, oh, you're not going to get anything over top of us. And Dallas said, okay, we're just going to take 10, 15 yards every play and we're going to make you pay for it. So it's just like, okay, well, you switched up what worked for 3 quarters, and that's both the message on offense and defense. It worked so well for 3 quarters. Now, all of a sudden, you're switching it up to try to get out of there with the W as fast as you can, but it's almost like, again, not so fast. This game is not 3 quarters. You play 4 quarters for a reason, and Dallas almost made him pay for it. But I think moving forward, Sam, what I would love to see is, and I will always call it this, even though he's not on the team anymore, but Tyler Huntley time. Obviously, Huntley's getting prepared to play a Monday night game, assuming he's starting over there down in Miami. But, you're up 35-3 on a team. That's when Tyler Huntley can come in, with 10 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. And, you can kind of relax a little bit. You have the ball in your hands. You can kind of do clock control. But you want to get to that point first. The Ravens weren't there. And they acted like they were, essentially. Mm-hmm. That was the game plan. I mean, what did you see in particular, maybe watching the film or just your observations from the game in general, from the offensive possessions specifically that you would have changed? Especially, I know some of those third down calls that we saw. The one worked at the end, but when they went 3 and out, I think that was the definition of conservative.
Yeah, don't stop doing what you're doing. Run the ball to the left side. Stretch the defense out. It looked like the defensive coordinator of the Cowboys just didn't watch film the 2 weeks prior and didn't put Micah Parsons in any type of position to affect the interior of the offensive line. So keep doing what you're doing throughout the game. It didn't really need to change anything. It looked like they took a step back and decided, okay, we're going to stop the clock. We're going to run to the right side to switch things up and fool them a little bit maybe sometimes. And it just didn't seem like they had their best interest in scoring. It looked like they were trying to pretty much slow things down and wind the game into a halt instead of, that's not your responsibility. Your responsibility as the offense is to score points. Now, when it's 35-3, like you said, and an insurmountable lead, yeah, you take it there. But the Ravens have shown that no lead is insurmountable, at least right now with this defense. So keep on putting points on the board. Maybe give the ball to Lamar. Maybe have him throw a little more times intermediate routes and take it from there. But yeah, their offensive philosophy, at least in the waning minutes of that game, was definitely lacking some intensity.
Yeah, and let me ask you this, I think, because I don't know what the current lead the Ravens would have to have you feel comfortable entering that fourth quarter. If you had to put a number on it, a blank point lead for this Ravens team with 15 minutes to go in the fourth, you feel comfortable with them not blowing, what would that number be?
4 touchdowns. I want a 28-point lead. They gave up 3 touchdowns in Miami. I have a friend who's a huge Dolphins fan who doesn't let me forget it. So give me 4. 4 touchdowns, then bring out Tyler Huntley, not Tyler Huntley, Josh Johnson at this point, but go ahead and bring out the backup. But 4 touchdowns will do it for me, at least until this defense can prove they can handle a prevent style of defense without giving up the big play or giving up small chunks of yards every single down and getting into the end zone for the opposing offense.
This is kind of how I coped with it, Sam. I said, if Zach Orr's Mike McDonald Dolphins game was in a win, I'll take it. Yeah. If that was the game where, they go and, Mike McDonald blows that huge lead in week 2 in Miami or against Miami. If Zach Orr did that and that was his hey, we need to tighten it up. We need to stop being conservative. And Mike McDonald, we know he took off after that Miami game. If Zach Orr takes off after this Dallas game and the Ravens are still able to escape that with a win, I'm like, okay, you know what? I guess I'll take it in exchange for the quote unquote growing pains that Zach Orr has certainly gone through. And Sam, I'll bring it up right here. Speaking of the Ravens defense through week 3, we know that rush defense has been incredible. They're number 1 in the league, both in yards per attempt given up and total yards. 150 yards total in 3 games is just ridiculous. Part of that being they've been up by so much in the first 3 quarters. The teams are like, well, we can't really do this anymore. We have to abandon that and start to pass the ball. But the passing defense has been the concern. They're 26th or at least tied for 26th in yards per attempt, in dead last in the league in total yards given up through the air. which again is kind of interesting because we've said Marlon Humphrey's played really well to start this season. We've seen players step up like our Darius Washington in that Dallas game. He got in CeeDee Lamb's head a little bit. Kyle Hamilton looked back in that game. But then you see guys like Marcus Williams, who has certainly struggled to start the year for the Ravens, and others as well. It's kind of been a mixed effort there that has resulted, along with game flow, in a tough year for this secondary. And we all know the offense and defense, they go hand in hand. They dictate one another. And with the Ravens being conservative on offense, well, they showed that exact same thing on defense. And the word of the day is just finish. Finish the game if you're the Ravens. But what have your initial thoughts on this defense been, considering the run defense has been so good, but the pass defense certainly leaves something to be desired?
I wish I had the numbers. I really wish I prepared to have the numbers on what the Ravens defense is ranked in the first 3 quarters, because it's night and day when you look at the film. Yeah. The defense looks good. The talent is there. I don't think that they should make any changes to the talent. I think I wanted to see more Kyle Hamilton at the line of scrimmage, more variety of where he's lined up. And you saw that in week 3 against the Cowboys. So good on Zachary Gore to get that together. I just don't know what it is about the Ravens in the fourth quarter as far as being preventative, giving a little more space for the receivers to make plays underneath in the intermediate and short stuff. And I think the Ravens just need to get better with that. I think if they can't, then just play like you would in the first 3 quarters. Perhaps give up a big play in the fourth quarter. But the dink and dunking, the easy passes to the receivers cannot continue. I think the Ravens need to do something about that. So to your point, I think the Ravens are going to change up a little bit. I think they're going to be a little less conservative, both on offense and defense. And you'll see maybe a little bit of that in week 4, but it's kind of mind-boggling to see how this defense changes from the first 3 quarters to the fourth.
And maybe at M&T Bank Stadium, when that fourth quarter starts, they just have to like do a mini pregame again. Like, run a legend out of the tunnel and only put the 1. Don't put the 4 up for the 4. Just put the 1. Just put 1. Hey, it's a new game, 1 quarter. And you kind of do it 1, 2, 3, and then 1 again. But yeah, I mean, it has to get better. We know that this Ravens team, I mean, the talent level, it's there. But when you start to blow these fourth quarter leads the way that they have, I'm sure it gets in their head a little bit of like, oh man, like in that you see it happening again. And obviously for those who cover, watch the team, fans of the team, we're all sitting there and we're like, are we really going to do like really again? And you see that graphic, like that Browns jersey with all the quarterback names. And that's like the Ravens fourth quarter graphic. It just goes and goes and goes. You add another one to that list. You can't do that if you want to win a Super Bowl. You have to be able to play for 4 quarters. And obviously it seems like the team has gotten the message, but there's a difference between getting the message and actually showing that you got the message on the football field. So come over to the final part of the show. We'll continue talking about the Ravens, how they can be good in the fourth quarter, but also that Ravens and Bills matchup in week 4. Stay tuned. A lot to get to on the show. First, the show is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page when you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. So for this Ravens and Bills game, the Ravens 2.5-point favorites opening up on FanDuel. So if you like that line, head over to FanDuel. Just visit FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com. We're back. Our final segment, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher and Sam Njoku still talking with you here on this Purple Friday. Again, really appreciate everybody for being here today, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day, your first listen of the day as well. Be sure to like and subscribe in video form and also in audio form. You can do the exact same thing. Appreciate all of the support. Maybe a bonus episode tomorrow on Saturday. Maybe not. If there's a headline to talk about, I'll talk about it. But if not, we'll take a break until the pregame episode on Sunday morning. But Sam, this Buffalo game, biggest matchup of the year, in my opinion. To me, it even trumps Kansas City in week 1, especially because we all know the stats. We talked about it, you and I, of the 0-3 hole. They avoided that, but 1-3 doesn't sound much better. Doesn't sound much better to me. It's a Buffalo team that has proven that they're one of the top teams in the NFL right now. And a Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson matchup, I will never turn down the cinema that those two absolutely put on the football field. So heading into this one, do you feel like Buffalo is a good matchup for Baltimore? Do you think Baltimore maybe isn't as great of a matchup for Buffalo as other teams? Who do you think has the edge in terms of personnel and how you think each team can exploit the other?
I like this matchup in favor of Baltimore. I really do. The Bills have a defense that very basic. They play it too high, most of the time. In fact, I think they're second. Actually, after this game, I think they were 4th in the league as far as being under cover two high zone. So the Bills really do not play to the strengths of the Ravens in terms of what they're able to do. They don't blitz. They're dead last in blitz rate in the NFL. And I think for this offensive line that has struggled picking up stunts, picking up motions, you'll need to have a fifth guy to really disorient this interior line. So the Bills are going to have to do something that they haven't done all season, something that's out of the norm. Their linebacker core definitely not up to par as far as what to expect from this Ravens team. So the Bills are either going to have to play completely out of their element, or they're going to get gashed by this run game headlined by Derrick Henry. So I expect the Ravens to do what they've been doing all season. Nothing's going to change on their end, but the Bills will have to do something different on their end, sending an extra guy, maybe keeping their cornerbacks on the island. By the way, the DBs of the Bills are the strength of this team for sure. And I think the Ravens game plan will be short and intermediate. Nothing over 5 yards, very dink and dunk, very Tom Brady-esque, I would say, to complement the running game. So I think the Bills are going to have a tough time on the defensive side of the ball. On the offensive side of the ball, Josh Allen is just playing out of his mind. I mean, through 3 weeks, who's the MVP of this league? It has to be Josh Allen, regardless of the competition he's faced. The Ravens, we've talked about it over and over again. They have a dynamic quarterback that they play every day in practice, so it won't be a challenge on that front. But can they stop Josh Allen in the fourth quarter? Can they stop these dink and dunk plays? Can they keep Josh Allen from doing what he's been doing for the last 3 weeks, and that's killing defenses? So if the Ravens can do that and the Bills defense are unable to execute and to diversify their play calling, it could be a long day for the Bills.
And I like what you said about the Bills defense, because we actually talked about this with Joe Marino of Locked On Bills on yesterday's show. And he kind of said that, the Bills don't really adjust to who they're playing. They just kind of go out there and they play their game, and they don't play heavy personnel. They play a lot of multi-DB packages, and they go pretty light. And so obviously with a Ravens team that loves to go heavy, we saw last week the imbalanced lines, putting Ronnie Stanley over on the right side on some of those plays, bringing in Patrick Ricard in those heavy sets, all the personnel packages. If the Ravens just wash Buffalo at the line of scrimmage, I'm not sure they have the personnel to adjust to that. And so if they want to play heavy ball, if Baltimore wants to go out there and impose their will physically, I'm just not sure Buffalo can match up. They have a heck of a defensive front with guys like Ed Oliver, Greg Rousseau, Von Miller's having a resurgent comeback, but again, we saw the Ravens have success just throwing the ball 15 times against Dallas, 3 straight dropbacks. And again, through those first 3 quarters, that worked out pretty well for them. And again, if you want to look at the actual stats here, Buffalo's run defense, Sam, 22nd in the league in terms of yards per attempt, giving up 4.7 on the year. And their pass defense is the one that you don't really want to challenge. They're second in the league right now. They're secondary, despite losing guys in the offseason, dealing with injuries. They've had multiple guys just step up and multiple players make an impact. So if I'm the Ravens, I'm with you. Just do what you do. Run the ball with Derrick Henry. Force those option plays. Force those zone reads. And with that, you can work the play action. And like we talked about last week, I think we saw it a little bit. Obviously, there wasn't a huge sample size because of the lack of just attempts in general. But Buffalo's going to have to make choices. And if they don't choose to match up with Baltimore's personnel, that could be a way that either this game has 30, 40 points plus scored for each team, or the Ravens just go out there and maybe put on a show that people weren't expecting.
Yeah, I think people really realize that this offense of the Ravens, nobody wants to play them. I think Von Miller made a comment to that effect, that this offense is dangerous. If the interior line can get their act together, which they did in week 3, and they play the game that they are supposed to play, it's going to be tough for the Bills to match up with it. Now, on the opposite side, Josh Allen's really the story. Can the Ravens do what they haven't really done since the season started, and that's close it out and finish the word that we talked about earlier in the fourth quarter? If the Ravens can do that, I think it could be a different game. I think we're maybe talking about a Lions game from last year, a 49ers game from last year, but it's up to the defense. I fully expect the offense to do what they need to do unless they go completely off the script, something that the Bills haven't shown that they're able to do or want to do. So it could be a matchup of who can stop who, and I think for now, you have to go with the Ravens, even though if you're a Bills fan, I can completely understand why you believe Josh Allen's going to get it done, because he's been getting it done over 3 weeks.
Yeah, you can go either way with this matchup. But if you pick Baltimore, I don't blame you. If you pick Buffalo, I don't blame you. 2 really good teams, despite Baltimore being 1 and 2. These are 2 of the top teams in the AFC. But Sam, to your point of what you said with Buffalo playing a bunch of too high stuff, Baltimore and Buffalo are 2 teams that do not let you pass over top of them. They say, take the short stuff, take the intermediate stuff. We'll tighten up in the red zone. That's why, to me, I think it's either whoever just has more red zone attempts, more red zone possessions, or just whoever has the ball last. Because I think with these two teams, their mindsets are, if we play too high stuff, you're not going to get anything over 30 yards on us, at least unless there's a blown coverage like we saw in a couple of Ravens instances, and there's still some communication issues on the back end. But to me, if you're Baltimore, Lamar's done a great job of this season, taking the short stuff and just taking what's available, whether it's a rushing lane, whether it's a short throw. And hey, you know what? For the first time in 25 years, the Ravens ran a successful screen, actually 2 in a row. 2 successful screens. I was kind of like, hold on a second. This is not the Baltimore Ravens. What are you doing here? So if they can continue with that screen game, and if they want to work horizontally, getting multiple guys involved like that could cause Buffalo issues.
Yeah, and kudos to the interior line. I know I talked about it a little bit, but they were moving in those, not only in those screen plays, but also those zone reads, having the right guard pull over to the left side to close out the game. In week 3, the guards are going to play a big part in this. Now, I know there's a couple of injuries of note that may change the things around, but I still think that this line is going to do a better job than they've done previously of helping out Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson. So, yeah, kudos to the screen game. I mean, I've been hammering that for years, and finally it looks like they got their act together. We'll see what happens in week 4, but again, to our point, the Bills' defense will need to drastically change the way they play, the way they align themselves, and the way they ball out. So I just think that it's going to be a little too tough for them to do so, considering how much success they've had in the first 3 weeks.
Yeah, speaking of the injuries, Andrew Voorhees did not practice for the second straight day. All the other offensive linemen returned to practice. Both Voorhees and Jalen Armour-Davis were the 2. So Armour-Davis left Sunday with a hamstring. That's still bothering him. But Voorhees with the ankle. So we'll see if today's injury report gets any better for Voorhees. But Sam, I assume if Voorhees can't go, you just plug Ben Cleveland in there at left guard. Is that what you do?
I would, but I don't think the Ravens are going to do that. I think they're going to put McCarry at left guard and put Rosengard in at right tackle. I just think that Ben Cleveland's in the doghouse, and until they show me otherwise, I don't think Ben Cleveland gets on the field. It'll be great to have Ben Cleveland play left guard, but I just don't see it. I just think that they're going to plug in McCarry and push Rosengard because of how much success he had in week 2.
Yeah, they have the chance to do the funniest, not funniest thing ever by just moving 5 different people on the offensive line all over the place. Underrated name, though. Maybe Josh Jones gets a shot. I'm not sure if they just want to plug him. He's a vet. I mean, obviously, tackle guard versatility. So could be. But again, if you want to play your best 5 in this situation, you probably do move McCarry over, and then you put Rosengard at right tackle. He more than deserves some playing time. But with the Ravens and their success through 3 quarters, I don't necessarily blame John Harbaugh for sticking with their guys. And it wasn't a rotation, and I'll take that. I will take that considering what we have talked about there. Yes. But let's get into a couple of keys to victory here, Sam, for this game. I lay them out here. 1, dominate on the ground on both sides of the ball here. We know Baltimore's run defense. We talked about it. If they can eliminate James Cook from this game early, as a receiver, he can still do damage, but just take that out of the game. If you get out to an early lead, Buffalo might have to abandon that. And again, Josh Allen's going to certainly have his way on a couple of plays here. I don't think there's necessarily any just completely stopping Josh Allen. It's more so, can you slow him down? It's kind of like Lamar. So being able to stop Josh Allen, James Cook, and then obviously on the Baltimore offense side of things, like we have been hammering home this entire episode here, run with Derrick Henry, run with Lamar Jackson, impose your will physically. And obviously that second point goes right into the first one with containing Josh Allen. He's a guy that is going to be able to make plays on your defense. It's just a matter of, can you limit those plays enough, and can you do enough to be able to win that game? And then finally, foot on the gas. 4 quarters, Sam. We've been talking about it for weeks, for years for this Ravens team. Foot on the gas, 4-quarter game. Those to me are the big 3 keys as we look ahead to this one.
Yeah, and it's hard to deny that those are the 3 keys for sure. Dominate on the ground is number 1 for sure. Don't get cute. I know how the Ravens like to do it sometimes. They should be running the football, and they come out passing the ball to throw their opposing defense off. No, just run the game, run the ball, be who you are, and let the Bills dictate what you do afterwards. If they put too many guys in the line of scrimmage, if they load the box up, then change your game plan. But for now, run the ball until they can prove they can stop you. Also, contain Josh Allen. I mean, that goes without saying. Good luck with that. If you're a defense, I'm sure Zachary Orr will have a game plan. I think their receivers are not the talent that we've seen in the last 2 weeks as far as the Raiders and the Cowboys. So I'm interested to see if Zachary Orr decides to play a little more man. I want to do it like that because of the way Josh Allen can obviously torch your defense and you're looking behind him. So I think you'll see a little more zone than usual in this case, but I would not be surprised if you saw a little more man sprinkled in just to combat the talent that the Bills have. So I think foot on the gas, obviously, big one. Don't stop 4 quarters. I don't want to see any prevent defense. I don't want to see any locks in zone. I think Nate Wiggins mentioned it on Thursday that he wants to play a little more. He wants to be tight in the line of scrimmage and prevent those slants. So be aggressive. Be who you are. Dominate. And I think the Ravens have a good chance in this one. But those 3 keys for sure that you mentioned are going to be vitally important in this contest.
Yeah, and as you said, I mean, the stats back this up as well. Josh Allen eats you alive when you play man and eats you alive when you blitz. Those are 2 things that I don't expect the Ravens to do a ton of. Baltimore, their defense hasn't necessarily been as aggressive this season anyway. I think they had the 8th or 9th lowest blitz percentage under Zachary Orr this year. So
correct.
I don't expect them to do that anyway, but then it's about getting pressure with 4, getting pressure with 5. Can they do that enough consistently? First 3 quarters has been great. But then, as John Harbaugh alluded to during his Monday press conference, the secondary and pass rush haven't necessarily been aligned in that 4th quarter. So that will be big as well. I have 3 players to watch here, Sam. 3 guys who have kind of been in the headlines in some way, shape, or form for the Ravens. Mark Andrews, obviously, with his slow start to the season, he talked on Thursday, said that he's the same old Mark Andrews, just about opportunity, and obviously big team player. We heard that from him. Justin Tucker, it's so weird to say that out of 29 kickers this year, he ranks dead last, 29th in field goal percentage at 62.5. And then Roquan Smith, someone who I think by Roquan Smith standards has not had the start to the year that many people were anticipating. Looks a little slow out there. Those are 3 guys that have struggled in one way or another. And if they can get going, Sam, I know that just makes this Ravens team so much more dangerous.
Yeah, especially Justin Tucker. I think, as we mentioned, this may turn out to be a close game. It's going to come down to a kicker most likely. Do you trust Justin Tucker at this point to get the job done? I don't know. I mean, you hope so. I think it's a technique issue, like John Harbaugh said. I alluded to that because his leg is still as strong as ever. It's getting there. It's just not getting where it needs to be. So once he gets his technique down, he's going to be a vital part of this team. But for right now, you wonder if or not the Ravens decide to go for it on the 4th down. If it's 4th and 1 inside the 40, can you trust Justin Tucker to get it done? I think the Ravens do, obviously, but something to think about if you're a Ravens fan. Roquan Smith has looked slow. Yeah, you're right. He hasn't looked the same as he has in years past. I really don't know. I don't really have an answer to what's going on because they're isolating him. The opposing offenses are making sure that he's one-on-one with a tight end or even a slot receiver, and he's not able to get the job done. In years past, he was a sure thing. We'll see if he improves. But my guy, the guy that I really want to focus in on is Odafe Oweh. He's going to need to be a guy to get consistent pressure on Josh Allen because, of course, the Ravens would love to play just a 4 or 5 guy blitz front. So get going along with David Ojabo, get to the quarterback and alleviate the pressure on the secondary who has had trouble finishing in the 4th quarter. Get Odafe Oweh going, and this could be an interesting game.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really good one. And you mentioned that it's probably going to come down in some way, shape, or form to the kicker as well. Sam, my final score prediction, I have Justin Tucker winning it for them. I have 27-26. I think it's going to be a close, hard-fought game. Maybe a little bit more offensive fireworks than expected, but I could also, there's a scenario for me somewhere. This is just a defensive battle in some way, shape, or form. But I have the Ravens winning this one. I think it will come down to, again, who has the ball last and in a battle of kickers between Justin Tucker and Tyler Bass. I mean, I take Justin Tucker 10 times out of 10.
So do I. I got the Ravens winning 31-30, a little more points on the board, but overall, I think it's just going to be the Ravens getting it done. I just don't think that the Bills have the versatility to get the run game stopped. And what I saw from the Cowboys, although the Cowboys do have the worst run defense in the league, I still think that the Ravens have the tools to impose their will in this game. As long as that's the game plan, I see no reason why the Ravens will come out of this game with a W.
Yeah, just some baffling personnel packages and just players out there for Dallas in that week 3 game. But you know what? Baltimore did what they were supposed to do in those first 3 quarters. If they show you that look, you take it 10 times out of 10. You do what you do. So I expect this week 4 game to be a good one. 2 of the top teams in the AFC. And Sam, it could be looking at a potential playoff or even AFC championship matchup down the line. But I appreciate you as always, man. Thank you so much for joining me. Please, as always, tell people where they can find you, what you're working on.
All right. You can find me at Instagram on Ravens Talk Podcast. You can also find me on YouTube at Ravens Talk Podcast, where I'm doing not only podcast episodes, but all 22 analysis. You can also find me on Twitter X at Ravens Talk Pod. And that's pretty much it. Yeah, we're doing a lot of good stuff here. We're trying to get more content out to Ravens fans. And it looks like the Ravens are lining up to have a great season.
Yeah, looking that way. So we're going to see how it all plays out for them in week number 4. But of course, be sure to check out Sam and all his work. Follow him. I'll have the links to his work down in the description below. But Sam, I appreciate you as always, and appreciate everybody for tuning in, listening today on Locked On Ravens. Maybe a bonus episode tomorrow, maybe not. We'll see how the headlines end up taking us and how they carry us. But regardless, we'll be back here at least on Sunday morning with a game day episode. So be sure to stay tuned for that. Like, subscribe on YouTube, follow along in audio form as well. And I'll see you right back here soon on Locked On Ravens.